Welcome back to your class number 2 on integrating your sun and moon. So this is going to be our next step in understanding the basics of your chart energetics from a both the cosmic design perspective, but really we're going deeper here in terms of these now specific core elements that we have to honor, that have certain wants, that have certain needs, and they really are essential aspects of our inner and outer being. Okay, so let's get started here. Okay, here we go. And welcome to class number 2, your Sun Moon Integrated Medicine. And working with the essential Sun and Moon really integration and I've also got this context, right, that I'm going to remind you of. We're just going to touch on this. We're not going to spend really a bit of time on this because we study this in more detail in more intermediate and advanced classes on the cosmic cycles. Having said that, as I mentioned last time, it is important, I believe, from where I stand, to have just an understanding of what paradigm we're in, and because we're basically taking, if you like, this course and this journey just as Uranus entered Taurus. So this is an important context to keep in mind because it will color and, if you like, flavor and alchemize your own sun and moon relationships and pretty much the rest of the dynamics that you're playing out here based on these new, if you like, dynamics and even the new patterns that we're seeing with Uranus. Obviously, the rest of the cosmic context as well, but I'm sort of singling out and highlighting Uranus and Taurus because it's a big one, and because once again it just happened as we are here, literally in the last 2-3 weeks, as we are taking on or really embarking on this journey. So, okay. As I shared last time, I love to have this as a little bit of just a slightly different picture of the solar system. It's just my way of sort of drawing your attention to these actual beautiful, if you like, balls of energy, because they really all look like balls and really spheres of energy as it happens. All right, so we're not just studying here these, flat designs, if you like, and, pieces of paper. Obviously, it helps us to be able to bring that to a 2-dimensional surface so that we can study and map it out and then see how we relate with that. But really, we're talking here about really expanding our cosmic consciousness, expanding our higher selves and our inner selves by projecting our core needs, wants, if you like, urges, capacities onto very helpfully these specific archetypal, if you like, symbols. Okay, so we've got, yes, this little dot here, that's Mercury. This obviously here you're familiar with is the sun. This little dot here is Mercury. Very important. It's closest to the sun. It's like the sun and the Mercury are like the ego mind representation. You know how we say we identify a lot with our ego mind, so that's Mercury and the sun. And then we have known as the second rock from the sun is Venus, right? The sister planet to Earth, which is the third rock from the sun, our beautiful planet. And then we have Mars there. And so you saw last time there was an asteroid belt. It's not shown here, that sort of separates this, we call it the inner sky, or the inner planets, which are basically our really core needs. And then we've got the more social context here, which we will talk about Jupiter and Saturn in our last class, and then Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto here, and then some new discoveries as well. So just so you can see here the scale and the size of these, if you like, big and small players in the sky, even though none of them is small, including Mercury, including the moon, right? The moon is the smallest, and yet because it's actually closest to the Earth, right? Not to the sun. Mercury is closest to the sun. the moon is closest to the earth. And as such, because of the perception and because of its gravitational pull, because it's not just the size that matters and the mass, even though that is what defines the planetary gravitational pull. And it's the, if you like, energetic or electromagnetic influence that it has, but it's also the closeness of a particular planetary body to another, right, that causes a certain gravitational pull as well. So the moon is closest to the earth, and as such, very, very important. So basically, archetypally, as we're going to really deepen that today, equally important, if not a tiny tidbit, a bit more important than the sun. But we're really, when you study with me, we're going to be exploring that continually. I'm going to be reminding you to explore both simultaneously. And then if I see that you're identifying more with one, that I'm going to be inviting you to, for example, if you're over-identifying with your lunar consciousness, then I'm going to be inviting you, based on the questions you ask, based on your own needs and things like that, and what you express. That's basically what I'm referring to. And then obviously when we work on one-on-one, this is even more obvious. So having said that, a little reminder here, right? So if you haven't done this, printing on your natal chart, the chances are you have at this point if you're watching this video. But I know sometimes if we have a very Gemini-ish mind, or if you've got a lot of planets in air, right, a Gemini and Aquarius in particular, but Libra as well, we like to speed, even Aries, right? We like to sort of get on with things and maybe skip a step. And so obviously it is up to you what you want to get out of this and how you approach it. And I have a strong Gemini and a planet Aries, so I can relate to the desire to like speed read through everything. It's like, get on with the program. But because we're talking here about, and really we're tuning, we're going to be we're engaging our intuitive self, right? And we're also engaging here the energetics that we're working with. So this is not just a cerebral, it's not just a left brain process. It's a right brain process that requires what? It requires slowing down, right? It requires connecting with our body, connecting with our heart. Not that you have to do it, but it is ideal if you can balance both. And the way how you're going to know, Milada, which one do I need to focus in? Well, we're starting to discover here the process that will show to you, hopefully as clear as ever, what aspects of your being are asking for a greater attention, and in what way, how you are to do that, right? Based on the element, for example, of your sun and the moon. Because if you do have a predominance of planets in air, then the cerebral, right, being in your head is your comfort zone, right? Even if you just have the moon in air, or if you have, let's say, the south node, which we're going to talk about next time, the lunar nodes. So having said that, if you've got a predominance of planets in water, right, for you it is essential that you slow down. And likely I don't even need to tell you that, especially if you have the sun or moon in water, which would be Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces. This is how you're processing life. Whether it could be sun and moon, it could be even Mercury. Mercury is this planet, the symbol really here. And right, the planet that's closest to the sun. So it's very, very much, we tend to identify with it. And so then when you have a predominance of water, we tend to process things in a more empathic way, right? So it's like we need things to slow down. We need time to process things, right? Compared to Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius in particular, and Aries like speed up, let's get going here, right? So if you got Aries and Sag, you're likely the one that keeps being that activator, that inspirer, right? We've talked about that last time, and we're going to we're going to deepen that a little bit in terms of what is the fire medicine? How does the fire medicine feel compared to earth medicine, water, and air? So once again, if you haven't done this, I highly recommend. It's a very simple exercise. I know typically at this level, or even if you're a little bit above beginner level, we tend to still struggle maybe with some of the symbols. So still do this so that at least, you're not spending time in the back of your mind thinking, oh, right, there are some steps and little things to check off, okay? And if you have, then challenge yourself a little bit to maybe write down here, right, by using that, the couple of slides on the symbols, right, from the class number 1, on, you know, writing down here names beside each planet, right? So it'll be Mars, you're going to have the moon here, Jupiter, Chiron, if you'd like, the sun, Mercury, and even if you're like, I don't know what all these means, that is okay. We need to understand the letters of the alphabet, of the cosmic alphabet, before we can continue on. And then if you really want to challenge yourself, you're like, oh, I know my planets, right? Then really getting clear on that ascendant, right? And maybe write that out here, ascendant, rising sign. Where is the second house, third house? Write that out, the second cusp, right? And then as you do that, it's going to be so much easier to start navigating the chart. So much easier to as soon as you look at the chart, you're going to know where you need to look at. Okay, so with that said, today we're going to be focusing in mainly on the sun and the moon. Very, very important. The whole of your chart and the whole chart and the whole design really rests on the integration of the sun and the moon, I believe and find in my experience. And as I believe I mentioned that last time, that as much as I've been studying and astrology for 3 decades now and practicing it for many years and teaching for several years now as well, the more I do studying and practicing and teaching in particular, I keep coming back to the fundamentals and how important it is that we have those strong fundamentals. And once again, because of that Uranus in Taurus, so this is one of those core things that's going to be requiring from us collectively and individually, that we really awaken our inner Taurus. And inner Taurus, as we're going to learn today, if we didn't last time, right? You're going to see how Taurus now interacts with the sun and the moon. Simplicity, right? The fundamentals, really want that desire to have the strong ground to walk on. Now I have sun in Taurus, I mentioned that, right? So for you are going to be discovering what is it that you need and want today, right? So interesting enough, we would think that as smart and knowledgeable and educated humans, that we have a lot of awareness around what we want and need. But it is staggering and fascinating at the same time how many of us, including myself, including everybody on the planet, at certain points in our life really realize that we don't know ourselves as much as we thought. But it's not that we don't know ourselves. I believe it's because we keep growing. And as we get to these different thresholds in life, right, we keep shedding old patterns and ways of being, and then life presents new things and we have to learn new things. Pretty much what we're doing is we are releasing that over-attachment to our inner moon, which is our lunar self, which is that more comfort, more, I want to stay close to my family. I want to stay close to mom. I still want to have that umbilical connection to my mom and to my family, where blood is, that blood connection is everything. So as we start individuating, and by the way, for some people, this does not happen, and not that it's, there is no good or bad or even a perfect timing. For some people, it happens earlier in life. For example, if they leave home, but even if they leave home, and this is the key thing, the process of individuation still continues because we keep having to actually go back. It doesn't become just about the sun when we're talking about the individuation, because it's never just about the sun and our individuality and our ego. And how we differentiate ourselves in the world, how we become aware of who we are and what we stand for, because we need to keep healing and manifesting simultaneously. So we need to, as anytime we're sort of ready for new growth, we need to be meeting our own needs as well, and that's what we're going to be discovering today, right? So really, sun and the moon have to work together. Whether you have an actual aspect, like one of those little squares or trines or oppositions, we're going to be learning that more in intermediate and advanced classes. It doesn't actually matter, which is why I'm not teaching you aspects at this point. We're hardly even going to talk about it. fundamentally, there is an alchemy between the sun and the moon. We need to discover it. We need to bring consciousness to it, and really create space for both, for the awareness of both, right? And so now, before we dive in here, I wanted to remind you of the little sort of, as we transition into going a little bit deeper here, energetically and intuitively, one of the maybe definitions that you have already seen, and that you may be already familiar if you have studied astrology a little bit, at least, not just reading about your sun sign, not just reading like the horoscopes, but actually maybe reading an astrology book or something like that, or maybe browsing online, learning a little bit about it. You may have seen this, what we call a primary triad, right? So we refer to our primary triad, or I believe some astrologers call it primal triad, the sun, moon, and the ascendant, which is why we're starting with that triad before we move on to anything else. And so the very easy way, if you get lost at any point of this and you're like, oh, Milada, I lost you there. Like I got too caught up in my, like this could bring up stuff for you, okay? Like in terms of when you start, if you choose here, because you're obviously going to have a choice to either work on your sun or the moon as part of your homework or exercise, okay? And typically when we work on either, could be especially on the moon, because there could be wounding. Typically there are some unmet needs, but there could also be unmet wants, because it's it's going to depend on the aspects that we have of either the sign that they're in and the house that they're in. So basically our core relationship with the sun and the moon. But if you get, again, lost at any of the process, later on in the class, come back to this more simpler slide, because even if you just get this out of today, maybe a little bit of the additional insight, you're going to be good to go. Okay, so what I'm referring here to is I'm growing to become more. This is very important. This is even still so much better than just sitting there and reading about your sun sign and saying, oh, great, I'm beautifully described, but you know, as a Taurus. But you know what? It's a funny thing. there are just so many of those sun sign descriptions that I still am not resonating with. Okay, so now could be especially with younger people, and it's also going to depend on a whole lot of host of things, including our relationship with the father and mother. But we're going to learn today that really what we're referring to here when we speak about the sun and the moon is our archetypal father and mother. So like a father-mother image that we all have, that we're all born with, and then it's just gets sort of highlighted, if you like, by our birth parents. Okay, and oftentimes it's very much resonant to the images that we bring in with us, but it's not meant to really. Our sun is not meant to describe our father, and the moon is not meant to fully. It cannot. Our mom cannot fit into our moon. Or you know, we, for example, as a mother or a father, or even a teacher, whatever role we're playing, we cannot fit in somebody else's, sun or moon. We're a whole lot more than that, right? So our parents are a whole lot more than that. Our role models are, but there is going to be a particular pattern. There's going to be a particular theme that our moon is going to connect in here with the heart and soul of who we are, the heart and soul of who we are. It's actually about us, about our emotions, about our needs, where our experience of a mother, and even more precisely of the mothering and the nurturing experience. And this is why it's connected with our mother, because obviously in most cases, right, our mother would have been a caregiver, right? If not the mother, would have been a caregiver. Obviously, most people have had a caregiver, could have been a grandparent, would have been that first experience of that particular nurturing, right? So it's more descriptive of that. And then even more so, as we're going to learn today, what we need to heal in that particular experience still, that even once we're no longer the small child, obviously, and the parent's role is no longer on, if you like, from that nurturing perspective, maybe in a different perspective, we still need to be continuing taking care of ourselves, right? That basically is what we're saying with the moon. We got to take care of ourselves, right? We are now our own divine parent in a sense, and we actually have an access to that divine archetype that provides that inner support, and then also we're inspired as a result of that to translate, hopefully, this into specific habits, because it's not just about the energetics of it, right? The energetics are great, and we can do a lot of the energy work, but we also need to be integrating energetically, but we also need to be translating that into specific habits, so that there is somewhat of a structure of how that actually is going to look like to take care of ourselves, right? So I'm growing to become more of and then you're going to include here a keyword, and I'm going to have several slides for you as similar to last time to pull from, okay? And you want to play with that, enjoy a process that you're going to insert that's going to be descriptive of your sun sign. So not I am my central Taurus, for example. I'm growing to become more. So this is a difference. Not I am central, not I am materialistic, or whatever words people can find in pop astrology books like materialistic, stubborn. That's not the point. The point is that Taurus people need to increase their worth, right? So the materialism becomes it's not a done process. The sun is an ongoing process, and this is one of the big paradigm shifting potentially perspectives that maybe you have been aware of, but you just haven't fully it hasn't fully landed. So hopefully with this introduction, you can start exploring that more from a growth oriented perspective, because there will always be another level of growing to become more of your sun sign. If you're an energy practitioner or an intuitive, really what we're saying here is we're becoming a greater embodiment of a light and a love. But also, because that's the essential energetics of the sun, of our solar consciousness, just like the solar light is, right? It's that nurture, vitality, and so on and so forth. But in addition, some of the core principles and energetics of your sun sign, right? Because not everybody has sun in Leo. Like that would have been like definitely becoming a greater embodiment of, for example, joy. And while that is, in a sense, essential to every human being because of the sun's connection with Leo, there is another layer here, important layer based on your sun sign. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. With the heart soul of, then you can insert a keyword that's related to your moon sign. This is now we're talking inner being. The sun is more of your social being or the outer being. However, it can feel differently when it's in one of the more introverted areas in our chart. And this is where I find a lot of people can get stuck in those paradoxes and then not identify or even disown their sun. I think I touched on that last time, right? So if the sun is in the 4th house, we could project it onto our father and or family and then feel like we have no identity. And it's so important to reclaim that, because anywhere in your chart, even if it's in one of those areas that are more conscious, subconscious rather, such as the 4th, 8th, and the 12th, right, that are more meditative, like the 12th, that are more where we tend to repress things more esoteric, like the 8th, it's still our sun, even if we tend to project it. So who needs to show up more? So this is the ascendant. No, my Leo rising, and I am, very much the, right, it's about that royal and regal and, confident appearance. While that is typically true, but I also find a lot of people are struggling to not even identify, to basically show up as their rising sign. So we do need to make a conscious effort. Okay, we'll talk more about that in particular in the intermediate, and I teach this in my astrology and healing classes as well, but I'm integrating it now more into everything that I'm teaching, because it's so important that we start our day based on what is required by our ascendant. Basically the first thing that we do, or the first 1, 2, 3 things in the morning, it's sort of like gives that impetus to say, okay, how is that sun and moon actually going to look like? Well, whenever in doubt, start with your ascendant, and then make sure that you're bringing in the sun and the moon awareness. Okay, so So let's talk about some examples and that we have already seen, so that we can just see it from a slightly different perspective as we develop these ideas. So I'm growing to become more, right, with the heart, soul of our moon sign, growing to become more of our sun sign. So it's sign, obviously, in the house. And later we're going to learn about the aspects, but not fundamental. Don't get distracted by the aspects are these lines. I know there can be like, so, oh my goodness, how can I? Sometimes in the even more advanced classes, depending on what we're talking about, I will even remove these aspectary lines just so they're not distracting. But in most charts, you're going to see them, so we kind of have to get used to them. So Dalai Lama, right? So they say this was a chart that you're studying, right? So I am becoming more of a sun in Cancer, right? I'm growing to become more. So what is sun in Cancer? You're going to see this in the slides today, and you've seen that in those basic slides about the archetypes last time. I'm growing to become more, what? Compassionate, right? Kind, gentle, right? Forgiving. So because that sun is in the first house, which is about the physical body, that's why I've got here the embodiment of. So simply combining, which at this point, if that's like, oh, well, it's too much for me to combine the house and the sign at this point, don't worry about it. Then whichever, typically the sun sign is easier for us to integrate, but sometimes, and you're going to discover this today or tomorrow when you do the exercise that I'm going to have for you, sometimes it's actually easier to conceptualize the house that the sun is, if on some level we have projected our sun and it's like actually I'm not identifying with my sun, in which case typically we identify more with our moon. Okay, but once again, it's going to depend on several things, which we're not going to get into today. But start with this, which I've done here, embodiment of compassion. We know this is pretty much what Dalai Lama's role has been. This is what he's known as, the embodiment of Buddha. Now, there may have been obviously other people in the world, right, that have that, not just sun, which pretty much anybody, by the way, who's born at dawn is going to have what we call sun rising in this first house. It's just going to be in different signs. So it's not just the sun in Cancer rising. There are other, right, that geometry we talked about last time. There will be a host of other things here, like that Venus singleton, and this pretty much the geometry as it is. A combination, right, that Jupiter here in we call it intercepted, meaning it's completely in the sign that's completely contained in this particular house. So there's just all of this to say, it's going to look differently for, we got to consider one or two things before we start making conclusions. Having said that, from the energetics perspective, when we're talking about the sun and the moon, keep it simple. Keep it simple. And then breathe. And then when you're sharing with others, don't try to explain it to them. It's going to depend on how your Mercury, how your mind functions and all of that. And we typically, as we're going to learn today, we tend to nurture others based on what our own moon needs. So you want to keep that in mind. So, for, hopefully that makes sense, right? In terms of, basically Dalai Lama needs to be, even though he is an embodiment of Buddha, but he continually still talks about that. And I'm pretty sure that even in this day and age, he keeps, obviously he's still praying. There is a whole host of things that he does so that he can keep staying in his heart awareness. This is very much about heart awareness, because sun rules heart, and it rules our, basically our, really our solar consciousness, which is our, really the best version of ourselves that we can grow into. Okay, so the other component here is the moon, right? So with the soul here, the soul of a modest one, that's basically what I picked. There will be several things here, and that you can pick. And I've just picked, obviously we already know a little bit about him, so it's easier. But you're going to, again, keep it simple. That's why I have these distilled slides, or the essences of each sign, and they really work. Okay, so just work with it. Remember to breathe and don't try to conceptualize it all, particularly if you're working with water or earth. Just try to be with these energies, right? If trying to feel it in your body, especially if it's earth, trying to just call it in, right? If you are doing any energy work, you can ask for more clarity in your, for example, tomorrow energy practice, especially if you're journaling and doing that in some way, connecting with your guidance and so on and so forth, right? So this is not just about trying to figure it out conceptually, it's about engaging your intuition. Journaling is very helpful. And then once again, connecting with with your own spiritual guidance to help you to feel this at a deeper level. Okay, so I hope that makes sense there. Obviously for the Dalai Lama, the rising sign is the same. So then he needs to show up also as. So basically his outer appearance and who he's growing to become more of are both in their congruent. So it makes it easier. Now, that's always not going to be the case. Oftentimes it's going to be three different, most often. But in some cases, you're going to have two of either the moon and the ascendant, right? Can be the same. In some cases, they're going to be completely opposite, right? You can have rising Cancer and then moon in Capricorn. It's like, and then the person is like, I don't know why there is this disharmony, but there are the two aspects of me keep being in conflict with each other. So we'll talk more about that in the intermediate class. Today, the purpose will be to deepen here the idea of the importance of doing the sun moon integration and starting the process if you are willing. Okay, so this is just a little reminder once again on the this what I like to call the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto eras, just because they tend to be obviously longer than a month or even a year. And I in particular highlighted the Uranus and Taurus. I already mentioned that it's awakening our inner Taurus, which is about the money paradigm. It's about our worth. We're gonna see a lot of people now talking more openly, including healers, including pretty much service-oriented professionals. So a lot of people who in the past have been like, oh, I don't want to talk about money. That's going to change, and rightfully so. And even for regular folks, if you like, they're gonna start more looking for ways to, for example, pay off their debt, right? Create a little bit of a plan for the future that maybe in the past, maybe people were more cynical about that and felt like it was out of their reach. I feel like that is going to change in good ways. So this is also about food and a new value system, right? So I've got here circular economy, collaborative economy. So just more, because Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac, so it's the number 2. So it's more about the balance of the feminine and the masculine. It's more about nature, versus the hustle, which is the Aries, is about me and what I need. Taurus is about also what the body needs, and also Taurus represents the Earth planet as well. So it's our planetary consciousness is also going to need to be awakened. And then, right, with the Pluto in Capricorn and Saturn, which we're not going to talk about today, that's going to bring a certain urgency to this awakening. But at the really fundamental level, it's about, we're entering a new era of peace and prosperity, but it's not about, Uranus is about radical shifts that need to happen. So as these new values we become aware of, and then actually as we start living in accordance to these new values, and it's not just individually, this is going to be you and I and our communities having to come together, because Uranus is a collective planet. So what we do at home and what we do with our families, we're going to have to bring it, it's going to have to be in more congruence, and we're going to have to be integrity. And with these values and what we invest money in, for example, that's going to be more important. No longer investing money, whether you're doing that consciously and or maybe because your employer, for example, if you're an employee is investing through a pension plan or other things, like, oh, I don't know what I'm invested in. Well, that's going to change the next 7 years, because market is going to, we're entering a new economic cycle. So people, including economic, basically, and economists and financial advisors are going to realize we're going to have to learn things in a new way. Something is changing, and people are going to be awakening to this, to their worth, to, for example, if you are a healer, if you're in your own business, right, how much you need to be charging for your services and really owning that. And it's about commerce as well. So it's about bringing your skills to the market, building new skills, and bringing your skills to the market. Basically, is about those shifts. So that started technically Renaissance Taurus in May 2018, and then it went back into Aries, and then it came back for good, entered Taurus on March, is it the 5th or the 6th of 2019, and we'll stay there until April 2026, okay? So just a little bit on that, and so we gotta kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because so that, you know, you can see, for example, if maybe you already have been aware of what your sun, your needs and wants are, if you like, right? Keep it simple here, your needs and wants, and all of a sudden you're like, all of a sudden, like if you do have a job, maybe you start realizing, I want to make a change, like I want to ask for a raise. Maybe you notice this with your partner. If you're in business, you may realize, you may all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, I need to raise my prices, and all of a sudden I'm no longer as concerned about whether people can afford it, because you may realize that you are going to either specialize in a certain area, and basically it's only going to make sense to charge, you know, that much money, or maybe you're simply gonna stop volunteering your time and or providing free services as much, for example, right? We're still going to have to provide value, so it's about adding more value. That is still going to be required. So it's not just about money, money, money. This is about the value, really living in alignment with our values and actually valuing ourselves. Okay, but also others, and valuing our planet and the resources that we have. So the luminaries and so-called divine parents, the sun and the moon, okay? The sun is known as the archetypal father, or the father image symbol, and the moon is the archetypal mother, or a mother image, okay, symbol. But I said earlier, this is not about our biological mother and father, even though our relationship with them, right, wherever our inner image of a mother and father, it does tend to, in some ways, correlate, and sometimes it's staggeringly like, oh my God, right? But there's, as we discover our solar consciousness, that's when we start realizing, oh, I can see now, right, how that has been connected to my relationship with that father. By the way, it's not just the father. We could project the sun to any male figure, typically the male figure. We could project it to the women, female figures as well, if they're strong, if they're like role models, if they are like influencers. But typically we tend to project it to our father, our masculine partner, and even to our son in the family. So anybody who really is, we feel, is more really carrying that energy. So the sun is about growing up, basically becoming an adult, like cutting that umbilical cord, not just at birth, but actually at some point saying like, I have to grow up, and I have to, right, not blaming my family or mom or dad, like it's just those stories. At some point we need to realize we got to take responsibility for what we're creating. And then the moon is still there to say, okay, but there are still some memories from early, in particular the first 9 months. So a lot of those, what we call the primordial memories, and it's not even just the first 9 months, the 9 months in mom's tummy as well, and even prior to that, but we'll just keep it to what we can imagine. So say, to keep it more specific, with the first 9 months of our life. So if you can imagine that experience of being taken care of either obviously being tended to, right? If the baby cries, we are either tending to the baby, or some parents may say, oh, let them cry, right? Or in some cases, right, the baby may be held very closely. In some cases, you know, it's the other way around. There could be other things that are happening as well, that the baby may be picking up on, right? So how am I feeling? How am I healing? How am I receiving? So how do I rest to feel better? So all of these things stay on with us for a lifetime, actually, to heal and to feel through. Because if you're a healer, if you're an empath, you know that in order for us to heal anything, we need to really optimally, right? We need to feel it first. And this is a big part of that emotional well-being and emotional healing. So we're going to touch on here on the medicine by elements. We already talked about elements, but just furthering that a little bit so you can start like hopefully in an experiential way to relate to it from a sound perspective, the energetics perspective. And so the house, once again, is where we need to do something. And when we're talking here from a healing perspective, where we need to take our medicine, okay, in different ways. We're going to learn how's that through the sun and the moon, and later on Venus and Mars. The sign, or rather where, right? The sign is how. So the process, what energy, what kind of remedy is that, right? And then the aspects, don't worry about that now. That's going to be explored in more advanced courses. So the fire medicine, right? So you can explore this. I'm not going to go into the detail. I want you actually to breathe, right? Really step, because this is when you set that intent, you're going to be instantaneously able to, like I already now, as I'm just seeing the color red, I can already feel that heat coming through. I don't know if you can feel that. And don't, again, if you're trying to conceptualize this and use your logic to understand the fire medicine, it may not be the process, because every element has a process. And the fire element is very much connecting with our life energy, right? With our love, with our fun, with creativity, with spontaneity, right? So we've got here things like sizzling, right? Radiating warmth. Fire sounds loud. You're going to see this, how it is expressed. People that have Aries, Leo, Sagittarius in their chart can be like, oh my God, you know, you're too much kind of thing, right? Aries sounds be like alarm bell, like there is an urgency or emergency. A Leo is more like the laughter, playground, fun, excitement, humor, and Sagittarius is the buzz of traveling, of studying, and also positivity, positive expectation. So it's spirit of enthusiasm, and also it's an energy that is meant to. It's like circulation of energy. So it's just wants things to circulate and to come from the heart. Okay. Take a deep breath, right? So you want to connect in with the earth medicine. And if your relationship with earth is like, oh, I'm just going to skip the slide and move on to the air because I want to still conceptualize this, it is okay to do that. But I'm going to remind you at this point to check remember that aspectarian that we talked about last time, that we're also going to occasionally refer to. Do you have planets in Earth? If you do have planets in Earth, this is very, very important. And if you have, let's say, 3 or 4, typically then usually it's easier for you to, right, speak less and be in that silence, to ground yourself, to find that inner peace, and particularly if you have strong Taurus, right, to connect with nature sounds, right? Taurus is like, slow down and smell the roses. That's Taurus. Virgo is because it's a mutable earth. If you recall, we talked about those qualities as well. It's more like the busy. Like the Gemini is the busy mind. Virgo is the busy body. So if you have anybody Virgo in the family, their moon in Virgo, or even sun in Virgo, or maybe south node in Virgo, which we're going to learn about next time, or even Mars in Virgo, they like to be busy, right? So it's about efficiency, work, health, organization. And so I've got here just to help you to sort of more experientially, so we're not just describing using left brain. The reason why I've got these vibrational tones and sounds, in case you have a strong ear, you're wondering, but why are we talking about the sounds? Because again, it's a way to engage your right brain so that you don't necessarily need as many books to read about, oh, what is the earth element about, right? You're going to actually, if you do this, even with every one of these slides, there will be some sort of entrainment that's going to happen where your guidance is going to help you to take in this and then experientially it's literally like when we take the vitamins and then the body knows the vitamins have come into the body. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, so we had some good food. That's basically the earth medicine. So that then you can recall that information in an easier way because it becomes part of your bodily memory as well. Capricorn is more firm, strong. It's usually, we use the word strong, even though it's not the best use of the word from an archetypal perspective, but that's how we perceive it. Just because then Cancer becomes like, oh, is Cancer then weak? Well, that's a lot of the, like when you hear Trump speak, right? And he's got that Venus Saturn in Cancer, so he's got a little bit of a conflicting relationship with the feminine, and then his inner Cancer, right? So he projects it out into the world, so that everything has to be strong, so that because he doesn't want to look at his own inner Cancer, right? Very, very important that so it's not necessarily strong and weak, but and I didn't put it here. Sometimes I'll use that word, but it's the resilient, it's that emotional resilience, it's that strength of being in our boundaries. That's, you want to emphasize that. The strength in what, no means no. But it can feel a bit more somber and melancholic. Okay. The air medicine is one of the busiest, right? So as much as it is about the busy mind, it's about the buzz, the wind, it needs space. So this is very, very important. So you want to take a deep breath. Okay, so when you connect with the air medicine, just even as we do this right now, as I'm doing this, I can literally feel like a breath. It just feels like a breath energy. The best way to describe it, it feels like space. And why this is important is because wherever you have Aquarius or even Gemini, in particular Aquarius, we may be judging ourselves for needing more space in our relationships with wherever that Aquarius is. But it's essential. It's essential for our functioning. For Gemini, it's so that we can share our ideas and develop our ideas and, connect with whomever we want to connect. From a Libra perspective, it's also about connection. It's also about the aesthetic response and harmonious sounds and beauty. And Aquarius, it's about technology and light. So, and innovation. And I've got here detachment, right? So connecting with the world of ideas, with society, and with the mind, if you like. And the last but not the least is the water medicine. So it's, right, take a deep breath, right, as you connect in with that energy. Just really set that intent that you're doing that right now. It's really available to you through the color, through what I'm talking about. When you connect it, without offering here and telling you how it's supposed to feel, actually, I'm going to avoid doing that, so that you can feel it for yourself. But I've got here some suggestions. I'm just going to say one word. It can feel a little bit more cooling compared to the fire medicine, okay? So, and then this is also what's interesting, just to sort of help you to, if you'd like to conceptualize or really feel what is the difference between Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces without describing it. Before we get into describing and defining people and defining ourselves as a type of water, Cancer is more like that still lake. Okay, Scorpio is more like the river, right? The river that's swooshing, very powerful and intense. And Pisces is even a bigger body of water. It's about our cosmic oneness, unity consciousness, and the ocean sounds. Now, people that have a lot of water just typically love ocean and water either way, but usually there is some more fishing and so on and so forth. But there is a little bit of a distinction, if you'd like, in terms of different water medicine and different water archetypes, okay? So with that said, just a little bit of a break here in terms of now, let's see, once again, right, applying that. I know we have worked a lot with Cancer. I feel like it's one of the underrepresented, in particular in this paradigm now with when we have Pluto and Saturn, and now the South Node in Capricorn, and we actually have the North Node collectively in Cancer. We're going to talk about that a little bit next time. Collective North Node, and we're going to talk a lot about the nodal pattern and polarity in your chart. So just wanted to have just a little bit of a here quote by Angelina when she talks about her own look. And if you recall, what house is connected with our appearance? It's the first house, right? So we would expect that her body, relationship with her body, is connected in some way that's going to be expressed as that sort of, and she does have that moon appearance, which is that Cancer. She has that Venus appearance, right? Which is, she's many times. She has been the most beautiful woman a woman in many magazines and so on and so forth. But let's not be defining her here. We're just sort of just seeing how she's identifying or expressing really that her relationship with herself. So she said, I look in the mirror and I see that I look like my mother. How interesting is that? I look in the mirror and I see that I look like my mother. How many people would actually say that? A lot of people say, oh, I'm seeing my mother, I don't want to look like my mother. But she said, I look like my mother, and that warms me, right? Warmth and kindness is Cancer. I also see myself aging, and I love it because it means I'm alive. I'm living and getting older. So there is some emotional maturity there. Don't love having a random dark spot from a pregnancy. Sure, I see my flaws, but what I see that I like isn't about a structure and appearance. It's more that I see my family in my face. How beautiful is that? And actually, from a medical astrology perspective, the first house is about even more specifically about our face, by the way, in our head. I see my age, so I see my family in my face. How is that for Cancer rising? So why sun-moon integration? So I already talked, hopefully it's starting to land, why that is important. If there is a dissonance or an unresolved power battle between the sun and the moon, it just simply takes up a lot of our time and energy. And I mean emotional energy, mental energy, and you name it, okay? So integrating our sun-moon energetic partnership really helps us to achieve that greater sense of wholeness. Why? Because typically people feel better when they do that. They feel more alive, they feel more creative. That flow that we keep looking for, even though it's Neptunian and Piscean, it really, the ultimate flow is, I believe, in the sun-moon integration. Because when we have these two aspects of our being understanding each other and working together, it's like working a team, then there isn't necessarily this so much energy spent on trying to battle the our ego wanting one thing and our emotions denying that in some way, or being contrarian to that, or vice versa. So key consideration would be here: how does my solar nature accommodate my lunar needs to help me heal and feel safe and well? And how can my primordials, we're talking instinctive lunar consciousness, right? That lunar healing and feeling, support a creation of vital life experiences that help us to stretch and grow our essential solar expression. I know this is a mouthful here, me trying to just put both of these perspectives together. Don't worry about it. It's just the idea is that we want the sun solar expression to support, which is our ego, right, if you like, and our healthy backbone, to our wants to support our needs. Somehow, on some level, they need to get on the same page. They're not going to be the same thing unless you or your person that you are doing a chart for has the sun and the moon in the same sign. But even then, there needs to be an integration. Typically, they're going to be in a different sign, and then that either you're looking for some sort of commonality that they may have, and or you are recognizing a paradox. And then how can we reconcile that? We're going to do that more in the intermediate and advanced classes. So I've got some slides here for you on the sun through signs, and then the medicine of your sun, even more specifically. What does that particular sun need? The sun in Aries, more activity. Taurus, slow down, right? Pleasure, calm, prosperity, sales. Sun in Gemini, and by the way, this is also sun in the first house and or sun in aspect with Mars. But don't worry about the aspects, for just read. So this will be both applicable to sun in Aries or sun in the first house. Okay, remember when we're talking about Dalai Lama? He needs to be seen and heard, right? It's that stepping into that leadership. That's the sun in the first. But it's similarly with the sun in Aries. Gemini, we got to learn. We got to be in wonder. Oh my goodness, that's, learning new things. It's very, very important. If we're not learning new things and not engaging, not just talking, but also listening, and keeping a dialogue open, we're not fulfilling our solar expression. Growing compassion, we already talked about that with sun in Cancer, or the fourth house, sun in Leo. Fun, creating fun, and being more likable. This is where actually when people say don't be attached to other people liking you, that applies to maybe most of the signs, but not to Leo or even Aries. especially we gotta be willing to be liked and loved, and then actually be in our heart and radiate that, and create more fun. Virgo, creating a healthy lifestyle, being of service. Libra, cultivating commitment and partnerships and teamwork. Scorpio, cultivating trust. Sagittarius, exploring the unfamiliar, expanding our horizons. Capricorn, cultivating character, integrity, accountability. Usually there's a higher standard for people with Sun in Capricorn. They may not realize that, but there is a reason for that. More is expected of them. Sun in, because that's what we've chosen, I believe, for ourselves before coming here and to develop our character, right? So Sun in Aquarius, cultivating true friendships. I don't know how many times, I would hear people say, oh, Sun in Aquarius, right? Very social people. Like, just look at the Aquariuses in your life and you will see that they're continually still striving to have friends, and or there is some friends drama going on, still doubting whether their friends are true, and so on and so forth. So it really is about, again, cultivating those friendships, and then choosing to connect with more people while developing the individuality. So not getting immersed and in the group think, okay? Making the social impact, giving back, but obtaining that or developing that individuality. With Sun in Pisces, growing in compassion. So similar to Cancer, but here we're going even more into the visionary, spiritual, and even unconditional love. Even, in Cancer, we got to still practice and being that forgiveness. So Pisces, we're transcending that. It's more complex, but we're connecting with ease and grace to help us do that, and our spiritual connection. Okay. The moon is going to be similar, but we are here healing. So we're really focusing here with the moon in Aries or moon in the first house. It's about healing and really feeling more safe to relate to that particular archetype. So we're healing stress, anxiety, for example, or we're healing our need to basically even, you want to be affirming this, right? There could be great statements that you can create based on your moon signs, and then really taking that in particular, you're doing energy work, or if you're doing this in your Akashic record, and so on and so forth, or even with Reiki, and so on and so forth. We'll talk more about that in the integrated, in the astrology for the integrated healing work. So similar with the moon in other signs, right? With the moon in Leo, it's about healing the heart, the inner child, right? In Virgo, people will usually say, oh, and then they get confused between the sun in Virgo and the moon in Virgo. So here it's very important. We're healing perfectionism with the moon in Virgo. But a Virgo actually comes very naturally to people with the moon in a Virgo. Sun in a Virgo, we actually need to develop attentiveness to detail. Now, a lot of people do develop this through their lifetime, so they become very competent. But a lot of Sun in Virgos still need to be willing to develop skills and competence, and basically you see with moon in Leo, with moon in Virgo, I'm saying love our imperfections. Now this is a process, not easy to accept our flaws, but it's essential. Okay, and then the rest. Okay, so it's a similar process. Another slide on understanding the medicine of your moon, by instead of trying to distill it into these particular energies and meanings, if you like, and connections, is to, whether it's you or somebody that it's like they don't, you can't, let's say your family member, or even for yourself, you're like, oh, I don't want to do the moon worksheet. Just ask yourself, let's say you have moon in Virgo, let's talk about work, right? And if you were a coach, if you were an astrologer, this would be also the way to sort of to inspire people to come out of there a little overly attached, and it's like, oh, it's okay, I don't want to talk about. Well, maybe let's feel through that, right? There'll be something very essential here that we need to heal and feel that's connected, and feel safe about that's connected with our moon. Okay, so let's talk about your education, your religion, your philanthropic needs. Let's say for Oprah, and so on and so forth. Okay. And then I have another slide with the sun in houses and the moon by house as well. So I already had it in the earlier slide, but just a little bit. So just because I don't need to forget on the houses, so a little bit more developed here just for the houses. Okay. moon in the house and the sun in the house. You don't have to integrate both the sun sign of your sun sign and the house right away. Just choose either or. If you're like, oh, I'm still struggling with my sun sign, but I can see how the sun in that house applies to you. Work with that, right? Until the other elements start coming together, like through journaling, through being that question, how you can integrate that more throughout the day, noticing what comes through, and so on and so forth. Another slide on even more specifically here, core creativity, core wants by the sun. So sun in Aries, it wants to lead, it wants to feel energized, it wants that visibility. But there could also be paradoxes based on the moon, because the moon always wants to feel ever more safe, okay? And then it's importantly here, your essential nurture needs. So very specifically, I provide you here with information on what your moon needs or your essential needs are, okay? So moon in Aries, while a lot of people will say, oh, moon in Aries, they just need to talk about themselves, so they need to be seen. What moon in Aries needs is emotional clarity. You would be surprised how many people with the moon in Aries are not clear on what they need. They think they're clear, but there is, because of how our society, especially with women, associate Aries with that sort of strong, pushy energy, then we sort of learn to sort of temper that down, and that can create problems, right? So very, very important to get clear. What do I need? What do I want when you have moon in Aries and or sun in Aries? So I will have those sheets for you so that you can write emotional mastery with moon in Capricorn. But there could also be shadow expressions of that. So the moon in Capricorn, right? Yes, we need emotional maturity, but we could also develop coldness, right? And or self-deprivation and control pattern, like being stuck in that control pattern. So you want to be watching for that, right? Instead of calling them shadow, I'm calling them karmic patterns to watch for. And very specifically here, again, rather than defining you, I am providing information on what, in my experience, you need to increase. So with the sun, we need to increase. With the moon, we need to increase, we need to grow. With the moon, we need to come more to our inner needs, our inner instinctual stuff that is still potentially unmet, and heal and feel, okay? So with the sun in Aries, increase vitality, very, very specific thing here that we can do, right? With Taurus, increase pleasure, right? Cook more or enjoy more food, do more sensual things. With sun in Gemini, increase perception and listening skill, create dialogue, learn, experience variety of learning, like take courses and things like that. This is also in sun in the third house, right? And so on and so forth. And with the sun medicine here, right? This is where we most need to provide. I've just got some sort of side notes here. But just here from the sheet, pick up what makes sense. Okay, so to pick one or two of these things, this is something you're going to be coming back to. And just if you're like, okay, this is where we need to provide, right? If that's the only thing you get from this sheet, just take that. Where we need to grow in confidence for all sun signs. We need to grow in confidence to be that, okay? Where we most need to make conscious efforts. We really need to be developing self-awareness, sending our consciousness to it. It's not going to be enough, right? If you've got sun in Aries and constantly complaining you don't have enough energy because your mom or dad or genetics or whoever to blame is not good enough. With sun in Aries, we need to create that, right? Just with sun in Taurus, we need to create that financial stability, for example. With sun in Gemini, we need to continue learning. We need to connect with, make the connections that are helpful to us. And maybe not rely on somebody else, right, doing that for us, but also trusting that we have those skills developed and then continuing to develop those skills. Similar with sun in Aquarius, where we most, I'm awakening to our potential based on wherever the sun is, and really enjoying being ourselves, right? So you want to be affirming it is now great to be me, from this perspective of your sun sign. So for example, sun in Gemini, it's great to be smart, right? It's great to be connected, right? Sun in Cancer, it's great to have a great family, to have that sense of connection. A lot of times, again, we think that people with their sun sign have already figured it out. A lot of times, sun in Cancer, people, for example, will oftentimes complain that they don't have, people don't like them or don't love, or especially sun in Leo as well. They need more love. They need more deeper sense of family. You know, they're attached to their home, for example, especially sun in Cancer. So it's a growth process. The moon, where we most need to relax in, where we most need to heal fear, and where we most need to take care of self, okay? It's like where we need to say, yes, please. Like in most cases, we need to be more open and receptive where we have the moon. And it's like either hire somebody to help you, right? To provide a massage or to provide some advice. That this is where we need to be more open. But oftentimes what happens is we tend to, especially when we're a service provider, especially when we're a healer or a mom, we tend to be, we flip it backwards. We actually nurture, we push our moon to perform as if it was the sun. And then we deny we don't shine the light of our actual solar consciousness. So it's interesting how that happens. Okay. So here with another example, Tony Robbins, which we touched on, right? Everything that we know about Tony Robbins, if you didn't look at his chart, you may have never guessed that he was born with the sun in Pisces, right? Like, let's take that in for a moment. Knowing what you know about Pisces, right? Very soft, energy. It's all embracing. It's about compassion, like even more than Cancer. And so that tells you, right? And probably what we know more about him is that moon in Aries, right? We know more that strong Aries self. Now, he does have that very strong Saturn and Capricorn here, which we're going to talk about Saturn in the last class. But why? Because he needs to grow and become more compassionate, right? And he has done that in many ways, right? Through his spirituality, through the charity work, through his foundation. But then he had that blunder in one of his conferences last year where he was criticized for how he responded to a woman that asked for his opinion on the Me Too movement. Okay, he responded as that moon in Aries, but it was actually his own trigger. Okay, I talk more about this in advanced classes because I could get caught up there in my own Aries. So with all of that said, let's here I've got some slides that you can use to do this. Okay, where do I start? What do I do? So nurturing my essential lunar needs. Here I have a slide on working on discovering. See, this is a discovery exploratory process. Okay, and I've got some reminders here with the moon where I most need to receive healing medicine. So you want to be reminding yourself, especially if you're a mother, if you're a caregiver, if you're a service provider, if you're a healer. And by the way, this is for both gentlemen and women, because oftentimes, depending on what we do, like nurses, for example, again, parents tend to have to, either one way or the other, operate a lot from this perspective. But then we nurture others based on our own moon, while we need to be nurtured based on our own moon. And we need to nurture other people, including our little people, including our kids, for those of you that have kids, or students, or your family members, your younger siblings, whatever that may be, based on their own moon. So people need to be nurtured based on their own moon. This is why it would be important to know your kids' chart, right? And oftentimes things can potentially even get dysfunctional, but I'm not going to get into that today. So why I am doing this, what I'm doing, is because I want to help all of us, right, to remind ourselves why it is important that we come back to our own needs, so that we're not looking for, right, misidentified ways to have, or misapplied ways to have those needs met through other people, right, including our children, including our partner, right, that where we may expect the partner to read our mind, and while we have to first be aware of what we need and then radiate that, really, teach others if you like, but provide that to ourselves first. Be open to allow that to the first place. So how can I feel better and more safe to be me? So the left side here is a question format for exploration, and then the middle part here is the sentence that's connected with this. So whether you like questions, whether you like statement, see whichever works better. So it is now safe for me. This is the most fundamental one, right? You don't even have to work with all of these, just it is now safe for me to, and then pick one or two of the keywords of your moon sign. I feel safe and comforted when. I feel supported when. And then when I receive, right? So I'm reminding you it's about openness, receiving. What feels nurturing to me is I now allow more support around. Now, where it gets a little trickier when we have the moon in a extroverted sign, in fire or air, because fire or air, if you recall, tend to be a little bit more extroverted. It's like we want to provide, but the moon is about receiving. So it gets a little bit trickier there. So keep that in mind, but then the slides are going to help you to hopefully to know, to help you to get that emotional clarity, if you like. So I am now ready to accept that my inner being, which by the way, moon also represents the inner being. It represents the our inner child. It represents our inner mother, which means our own, well, it's the mother image, first of all, then it could be our relationship with our mother and also ourselves as the mother, okay? What we need and what we're ready to accept now for our own emotional fulfillment, because everybody benefits when moms and parents and children, right, as early as as they can be, are aware of our own inner being. Okay, so the second sheet, and by the way, you want to work with either or, depending on where do you have more familiarity, right? Which one is calling you more? So you make that decision. You don't actually have to do both of these. So discovering my solar expression. So this is where we really need to make more conscious effort. So if you find that you're projecting your sun and expecting others to provide it to you, whatever it is that you know, catch what you complain about, catch whatever your biggest question right now is in life. I guarantee you, because I've seen this over and over, you know, we tend to try and put all of these different new techniques into our astrology interpretation and, you know, add other planets and little asteroids and all of these new techniques, where I guarantee if you were to look at your core questions right now in your life, like 90 to 90% of that is going to be related to your sun and the moon, okay? So that's how essential this is. Obviously not everything, but like a whole lot of what our main dilemmas. I now express myself more effectively in this area. I'm cultivating skills and willingness. We need to be willing. We're developing willingness here. Sometimes it takes a little bit of a convincing, right? To actually develop that willingness. For example, to lead. Let's see, Sun in Aries, right? We're like, oh, right, it's lucky you have Sun in Aries, lucky for you to be visible. Oh, no, Sun in Aries, Sun in the first house can have even more challenges in trusting their confidence, because they are, now it's going to be eventually easier as Sun in Aries, for example, Sun in the first house, as they individuate and cut their umbilical cord and you know, mature. But keep that in mind. There could be a paradox based on what we have learned or expected, that in definition of the sun and the moon. And this is the last one, sun and moon energetic partnership. This we're going to be exploring more in the intermediate class, but I wanted to leave it here for you in case that if you feel called, do it. If not, I tried to bring it as simplified here as possible. All I'm doing here is combining, I'm cultivating the new skills and experience connected with your sun sign so that I can heal or feel more of my, and then your core emotions that we need to bring into everything that we are doing and creating, ideally need to bring in that moon related core emotion. I'm increasing my vitality and energy daily by, right? I'm excited to experience more of related to your sun sign while taking care of my moon sign needs. I'm growing to become, right, a writer, teacher, speaker, for example, sun in Gemini, so that I can create more whatever that is that you want to create, while simultaneously I make conscious effort to grow and heal. So grow, again, is more sun related. Although of course there is a growth when it comes to a lunar consciousness, but typically we relate increase with the solar consciousness in healing and safety with the lunar consciousness, unless you have sun in the 4th and sun in Cancer. Now that's where it gets interesting, right? So guidelines for this process that I just shared will be to decide if you will work on your sun or moon first based on what you feel more familiar with. So if you're like, oh, I'm going to work on my sun, whether because you feel more familiar or because you actually don't feel as familiar and you want to explore it. So it's up to you. You don't have to do both, and not in the same day. Then choose one of the templates if they serve. And then if you choose, the only other thing here I want to add, if you choose to work with your moon first, because it's a little bit of a different we really want to do it from as sacred perspective as we can have, and love and acceptance. It can kick up stuff. So if you do choose the moon, don't push yourself to complete the whole exercise in one day. Just anything that you do, and even if you just spend on it 15 minutes, it's going to be worthwhile. I guarantee you, because your guides are going to help you. Your intuition is going to help you to, it's almost like raising your hand and saying, I want to heal. I want to get clear on my needs. It is going to bring you insight, whether it's intuitively or of course you want to bring as much consciousness to it, and hopefully through this course and beyond, this will inspire you to do that. If you choose to work with your sun sign, it's usually then easier to move on to other things. It's just a different consciousness, more extroverted, right? So then try still to circle back to your core lunar needs. So I'm a little bit less concerned if that's your process. With the moon, I really want you to give it, it's like your inner child. So if there's any wounding there, I would rather you spend more time on your moon if that's where you want to go first. And then there will be time to focus on the sun. Okay, and then disregard the template on integration unless you really are, got to do it. I'm going to challenge myself. I'm ready and willing. Once again, we're going to be exploring that more in the intermediate class. So with Angelina here, I have an example for you. So with her here, just really fundamentally, even if we would just, look at this one of these statements, it is now safe for me to be seen and to be a wild. It is safe for me to be my wildish self. And then I want you to, if this is you or right, whatever the statement here is for you, for Angelina, it is safe for me to be my wildish self. You're going to find this in the slides. For you, it may be to say for me to be my healthy self if you have Moon in Virgo, right? And breathe, and then just be with that. Because the lunar consciousness, when you connect with it, it just feels more still. It feels more like the room, like that bubble, right? And it's going to depend on the sign that you have there. But typically, well, it's the level of consciousness that it's more about pulling in, okay? I feel safe and confident when I travel, right? So for her, it's where she actually finds safety. Well, interesting enough, she has Cancer rising, right? So that's also what she needs to, find that safety with her body, for example, right? So I feel supported when I allow myself to feel my wild woman warrior. So what I did here is I, again, combined the keywords of the moon with the warrior archetype, right? Courageous feminine, that's the Aries and the moon. So play with this, right? Play with it. Just start putting together 2-3 words and feel free to improvise and add here statements that are going to come intuitively as you journal, hopefully, and reflect on this more. And I do suggest to have a little journal that's going to be separate from other things you've been doing so that you have it dedicated to this process, especially if you are planning to do more of this in the future. And I certainly hope so. And then Angelina's solar expression, obviously you can spend more time studying that, is just simply focusing on her sun in Gemini, and I've got it in the slides, right? Is I'm consciously and daily becoming more confident and creative in fulfilling, right, her own needs, right, for learning, for self-expression, for writing. In the 11th house, is about connecting with a larger community, right? Leveraging her influence. I've got here developing influence. So it's not like, oh, sitting and complaining, I don't have enough reach, I don't have enough friends. No, when you have Sun in Aquarius or Sun in the 11th, you got to develop that influence. That's your prerogative. That's what your solar expression, that's what your solar principle needs. That's when you're actually going to regain and reclaim your energy and vitality, interestingly enough. Okay, so it's not always about eating better, and even though nutrition is important, and or exercising. The sun is going to give you specific instructions, if you're willing, as to how you can increase that vitality and joy and happiness in life. So for Angelina Jolie here would be about community building, and she has done plenty of that. Okay, right, creating social connections and so on. And similarly here in that integrated, so we want to study this. If you do this, I'm not going to spend time on this. If you do this particular exercise, if not, just skip it and then come back to this when you are ready. Why did I put here? I'm just going to mention this last one. I'm growing to become, and then I said, friend to the people of. That just came through as I was intuitively working on this exercise for Angelina. Obviously, I'm doing it for her. So maybe you would be doing it for some of, because why friend to the people? Because it's the sun in the 11th and it's in Gemini. So just something that in some cases you may not need to define completely. If you're doing this for somebody else or helping somebody else, provide them with some of these, right, statements, and then let them fill in the blanks, because it will help you to also know what of these solar lunar principles they have integrated and where they are in their own development. Okay, obviously with children and younger people, they're still developing their ego, so they're going to be typically more lunar identified, right, identified with their mom and so on and so forth, or the caregiver. And then at 9 months, and then obviously later on when we turn 18 and beyond, is when we start identifying more. And again, for some people, it doesn't come until middle age that they start identifying with their sun, like in their 40s, basically. So, so with the Oprah, right, I'm going to become more of, right, here, the philanthropist. That will be combining the second house and Aquarius. And Aquarius is about individuation from mom and family, and willing, you know, and she ran away from home at 13. Now, it doesn't mean that every Aquarius or person with the sun in the 11th is going to run away from home, but it actually suggests here, it gives us the permission. It gives us the permission to say, okay, I'm not meant to be like my family. So wherever I've over-identified with that, or family or mom or whatever origin, you know, baggage stuff that no longer serves us, we need to be willing to actually let that go on some level and develop here into individuality, again, in accordance to our sun sign. Okay. I've got here John Lennon as an example. So when he talks about, and we know a lot about him, but just look at that moon in Aquarius, right? So he talks about, so this is what he needs to heal, right? His relationship with friends and groups. And we know he had a whole here experience with Beatles, right? And the friends and individual band members based here. Likely he had to work through his own moon in the 11th, right? Who is my best friend? And all that stuff. And yet he did create that, right? He did give that to himself, but he also honored that moon in Aquarius, which he called it, the parents instinctively recognized that I was a troublemaker. Now that also could be, that's also Aries, not just moon in Aquarius, by the way. It's Aries rising, so it's two of these things combined. And he says, I did my best to disrupt every friend's home. I did my best to disrupt every friend's home. Friends, 11th, Aquarius is about disruption, and moon is about home. I mean, it doesn't get any more accurate than that. And then he says, I'm not going to change the way I look or the way I feel to conform to anything. I've always been a freak. Now, it doesn't mean that Aquarius is always going to feel like is about that, but it does have a quirky becoming friends with our own inner quirky. So remember, wherever we have the moon, it's got to be about ourselves. I was sharing about that earlier. So while this is about healing relationships with his friends, it's actually him as a friend to others being okay with that as this. So anybody who had said, okay, John, you're just too weird, right? Like, I don't want to be friends with you anymore. Whatever stories may have been taken in there, that's what he needs to heal. Okay. So he says, so I've been a freak all my life and I have to live with that, you know? So he's like, he's accepting it. I'm one of those people. I'm one of those people. Moon in Aquarius in the 11th. We looked at that last time, so just there. So you have that comparison. Obama with Sun in Leo in the 6th, right? Bringing fun and confidence and charisma in his work. If you recall, 6th is the work and civic duty. He absolutely did that. Moon in Gemini, healing, right? His father image. And Moon is in the 4th. So, but it's also about healing the patriotism wound potentially here, and connection with roots to feel safe. And it's interesting that there was that birtherism or citizenship conspiracy, right? We don't really know how that really affected him. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But we can see in his chart that reconnecting with his roots and then also healing his father image here would have been helpful. And so one of the ways actually he did that was by writing a memoir. How cool is that? With that Gemini, right? Gemini is like, I got to talk about it. I got to write about it. This was Angelina Jolie, right? With her Sun in Gemini. She also wrote her travel journals and so on and so forth. And so, so he says, or here we have a statement, Obama formed an image of his absent father from stories told by his mother and her parents. I mean, look at that. Obama formed an image of his father, and then it actually says absent father. So we're not gonna, aspects here would tell us more. But just looking at that, so the image of his father formed by the stories. So this would be an interesting here healing work to say what stories, right, are running here instinctually and through even maybe before he could speak, right? So then, so the book was actually one of the best written memoirs ever produced by an American politician. So this would have been a way for him also to heal. And he says here, a story of race and inheritance. So hopefully that makes sense. And that it is. We have arrived here, your quiz questions, if you'd like them. What are 3 core wants of your sun sign? What are 3 nurturing needs of your moon sign? And then some inner reflection in terms of, are there aspects, so maybe you've listened to this, maybe you started working on this exercise, and I highly recommend it, even if you spend 5 minutes, but I usually about 15, probably would be helpful. If you're distracted and you need to do other things, make a note of where you started like checking out, and it's like, oh, I don't want to connect in. All of that is going to be relevant. So I want you to make a note of where you may be in avoidance, where you got distracted. Whether was it when you were doing your sun or your moon, or was there a particular principle of the sun or the moon that you were like, oh, I'm gonna watch the YouTube video. Oh, my, baby's calling me. Oh, my son, somebody else, or I'm just gonna flip to whatever, watch a movie. So what aspect of the sun or moon feels unfamiliar, distant, or unknown? And you're like, oh, I could use some help. I need to understand this. I don't get this. Make a note of it. And then what aspect of your sun or moon feels familiar? It's like, oh my goodness, that is so me. Okay. And as you reflect, once again, choose one or as you do your quiz questions and reflection, then choose if you'd like to work on one of the templates, and then journal any of the new insights you gain. So just highlight those new insights. Don't forget to engage your intuition. Don't forget to breathe. And then in the process, even if you're willing, start giving yourself what you discover in these insights based on your lunar. And so for example, if you have sun in Taurus, maybe have a good meal and then do this exercise. Right? Make sure you have that stillness and that quietness. If you have moon in Taurus, actually would be similar. If you have moon in Gemini, make sure you're journaling or even speaking this through, right? So start, it's like, oh, maybe I can bring this in the way how you're going to do this work. That would be also the way to integrate it so that you're not, again, just conceptually taking this in or memorizing, because don't memorize it. It's not about memorizing. It's about integrating a bit by bit if you are willing. So hope this served and helped. Thank you for listening, participating. I'm going to see you next time for your video class number 3 on understanding the karmic patterns of your lunar nodes polarity. So big hugs, and I'm looking forward to reconnecting again very soon. Bye for now.